And that's me. And there we go. Oh, next one, Ken. Sorry.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no problem. Yeah, no, that's fine. So anyway, we offer our services in three key areas: product development. We work closely with the UNH College of Engineering for designing, developing, and manufacturing new products. We improve manufacturing processes by offering training on Lean, Six Sigma, ISO, geometric dimensioning and tolerancing, plant layout, just to name a few. And we also help manufacturers reposition their business model to find new clients with our business growth training in the areas of sales and marketing. Next slide. This is showing you the National MEP Network. New Hampshire Manufacturing Extension Partnership is one of a nationwide system of MEP centers linked through the U.S. Department of Commerce and NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology. There's at least one MEP center located in all 50 states and Puerto Rico, and we're able to leverage a vast array of public and private resources and services that are available to every manufacturer enterprise in every state. Our mission's simple. We help manufacturers in New Hampshire improve their productivity, compete globally, and keep jobs in New Hampshire. Next slide, sir. We've worked with over 700 manufacturers and touched over 11,000 employees who have gone through our manufacturing programs. Our services consist of three major areas. The first area is operational excellence. That's where we offer training on Lean, Six Sigma, plant layout, blueprint reading, geometric dimensioning and tolerancing, and Lean and green energy services. Second area is workforce development. Here we're part of a sector partnership initiative in New Hampshire, where we work with middle schools, high schools, community colleges, and manufacturers to build the future workforce of New Hampshire. Every year we put on Manufacturing Month. And during Manufacturing Month, we coordinate with school visits to manufacturers in hope that some students will make manufacturing a career. Last year, we had 1,605 student visits to 45 New Hampshire manufacturers. And keeping with workforce development, we provide leadership training, team building, and problem solving, technical skills training, and training within industry. And the third area is our growth strategies. We offer sales training. We offer the Sales Training Collaborative Program, which you're going to learn about today, a custom sales training program, and the Marketing Strategies Collaborative Program. We also offer quality management systems training, which includes the various ISO standards. We have food safety training, as well as cybersecurity assessments and implementation for manufacturers and contractors who are performing work for the U.S. Department of Defense. And lastly, we have technology-driven market intelligence, or TDMI. And one more slide. As for our impact, economic impact in the state, after our clients have gone through one of our training programs, NIST MEP, where we receive partial funding, requires us to have them fill out an impact survey. And as you can see on this slide from the impact, it shows you compiled economic impact we've received from our clients during the last 2 years. And that's about it. Now I'd like to introduce you to today's presenter. You're going to hear from Ken Chio, president of our Sales Coach. Ken created our Sales Coach to help companies develop a sales strategy and execute a sales process that makes sense for their business and provides coaching and training that ensures their success. So now I turn things over to Ken.
Great. Okay, just so I'm clear, is anybody opposed to having this recorded? Because if that's the case, I don't need to record it. Just let me know, and I'll turn the recording off. Sometimes people are less inclined to talk about their sales strategy, but hearing no objections, I then will just say, I think you all deserve credit for being here, to take time out of your busy day to be putting yourself in a position to gain a competitive advantage. Because I think that my view is that we're never finished learning, and we don't know what we don't know. So congratulations on that. I was getting ready for this morning, and I'm like, geez, I want to change the name, because hopefully we're not in the middle of this pandemic, we're at the end. That's what I think, right? And I think, who knows? But it's at some point we will understand what the new normal is. And I think we're rounding the curve, let's just say, okay? Although we've been told that in the past. So anyway, but things definitely have changed, and there's no question. I'm sure you've all experienced that, okay? What we want to do is talk about, what's changed. How can you adapt in this current environment? What can you do to be more proactive with your sales? So this is a small enough group so that I think we could have more of a discussion about what is working for you, what's not, and that way we can make it more relevant as to what's happening in your world. And so if you have a question, I encourage you to either put it in the chat or even better, unmute yourself and ask the question, because you'll see that we're going to be covering a lot of things. I want to talk about how can you really come away from this with an idea about how to set objectives for this year, if you haven't already, that are based on real expectations. I find, I talked to somebody for the first time and I'm like, have you set your goal for 2021 yet? And the answer I ordinarily get is, yeah, fortunately we were able to grow 5% last year. So I think maybe, we'll experience that. Okay. Well, what's the magic of that number? Right. I think a more appropriate answer is, well, we think we're going to get 5 more of these customers, and usually they're good for at least the first year we work with them about this much money. And then we have this other segment of customers. In this market, we're seeing a lot of activity. So I think we can grow that by another 1 million. And this is how we're going to do it. Okay. And that's what I'm hoping at least you'll have that thought process. If you haven't done that already, on real expectations for market penetration, how to select the right target markets in light of the pandemic, and how are you going to really identify what messages are going to resonate with them that produces meetings, and what prospecting channels can you employ to produce results, particularly in a virtual world, a little bit about how that's changed as a result of the pandemic, knowing your formula and how to measure it, and then making sure that you stick with it and make adjustments along the way, okay? So that's a lot of subject matter. And what will happen is, questions will pop in your head and we'll be off to a different subject and you'll forget the question. If we have time at the end, of course, I can take questions, but I encourage you to just ask them as they come to mind, okay? All right. So these are really the elements of what we're going to talk about is, if you want a proactive sales plan, all of these things are important. Your marketing plan, your prospecting plan, how you track things and make adjustments, and their sales process. Okay. And we're going to cover all of these things today. But the first thing really is, marketing and prospecting and sales are not the same thing. They're different, but they're so interlaced today that you can't look at them individually like we used to. Marketing is generating awareness. It's what you do with the awareness that's important. People need to know you exist or they can't buy from you, obviously. But that used to be sufficient. When I got my first professional sales job, nobody had a computer. Believe it or not, there was a time when nobody had a computer. And, I'm reading a book about the $1 billion coach, the guy that coached all the executives at Google. Google was formed 13 years after I got that first sales job. There was no internet. So what's the point? When I would call somebody, they would pick up the phone. They wanted to talk to me because that's how people got their information. Today, when you want to buy something or you're even thinking about buying something, what's the first thing that you do? We're all programmed to go do our own research. And so that's why marketing automation, social media, the World Wide Web, We've been programmed to do that, and so are your targets, and so are your customers. So we need to be aware of that, and we need to be working together on a congruent way with marketing and prospecting. Sales does not start until you've had somebody gotten their attention and they're there to decide if they want to buy from you. Okay, that's when selling begins. And prospecting is proactively working channels to get them to that point. Okay, so they're closely related, but because people are out there doing their own research and deciding when it's the right time for them to engage with you, the closer they come to a buying decision, the less likely they are to buy from you. You know, unless it's an existing customer that's just coming back to repeat the order. Okay, and why is that? You know, when I don't know if any of you ever read the Challenger Sale, Corporate Executive Board, market research company, wrote a book that said, you know, did a lot of research, and one of the things they discovered is that 50% of the buying decisions made before the salesperson gets involved. What does that mean? That means that they've made some decisions. They've made decisions on what they want, what they need, and more likely what you can provide, and potentially what your competitors can provide. Okay, so you need to be aware of that. And you know, if people are, you know, the biggest challenge we have today is getting people out of status quo, right? Meaning that if they're buying from somebody else, or they're not currently buying what you can provide that will help them, how do you get them to change? Particularly getting to change from who they're buying now. You know, what you have to offer them, the problem that they have that will cause them to change needs to be greater than the risk to make that change. Okay, and so how do we get them when they're out of status quo? Because if we get them when they're in status quo, then close rate is zero by definition. Okay, they're just exploring options, they're just kicking the tires. So you have to understand, what is it that's going to cause them to do that? How do they get out of status quo? They need to have a problem. They need to have a problem. They need to be looking at that. Do we want to do something about this? And what would our objective be if we did? What would our strategy be? Then they start to explore options and search for alternatives. Then they have to justify making a change. So that problem needs to be big enough for them at that point to determine they need to make a change, and hopefully you become the new status quo. Okay, and the problem is, a lot of times when they introduce themselves to us, if we're being reactive, then they've potentially, like I said before, already maybe talked to some of your competitors. Another problem with catching them at this point is sometimes the decision makers tag somebody else to do that. So it's a purchasing person that's reaching out to you that isn't necessarily making the decision. Or it is maybe the decision is in the purchasing department, but it's at a lower level person that's contacting you. Somebody that can't say yes. They can only say no, or say, okay, I'll get back to you. Okay. And this is happening more and more today. I have a client that's a medical device manufacturer, and a lot of the people from the automotive purchasing departments have gone into medical device, and it's gotten so bad that they basically don't even call you up. They send you a message from a portal with some criteria, and they expect you to submit a proposal through this online portal. And if you have questions, you submit it to this online portal. Well, here's the problem. They've got to figure out, okay, what's it going to take for us to build this piece of equipment to make this thing for them? And how many pieces do they need? And how are we going to design that equipment, put it where we need to put it, staff that, and it's a complicated process that takes, they could invest maybe $10,000 in internal resources to even submit a bid. And they're going to do this without even talking to them. And by the way, whoever's doing that now is just going to junk that piece of equipment and throw it away and hire them to do that. It's just crazy. I mean, we made a change to that. I have another client that's a distributor for a pump company, and it was just very similar. I mean, these guys knew all the property managers by first name basis, and they drop in and they'd be like, "Oh, I'm glad you're here. This pump over here is making some noise. Can you go look at it? Oh, give me a proposal on that," right? And they give them a proposal and they send it out to New York City or they send it to Denver. Okay. And then they don't hear of anything and they're following up and they're following up and they're following up. And then, they finally catch them and they're like, "Oh yeah, forgot about that. Can you update your proposal? Send me another proposal." And they keep on doing this over and over again. I said, "Stop doing that." If they're serious about doing this, if there's a real problem, if they're concerned about that project, the person in New York will get on the phone for you. And two things happened. They started talking to the people in New York and in Denver. And guess what? Those people were like, "Hey, you did a great job over at 225 Berkeley Street. We got some other problems over here. Can you go look at this place in Somerville?" And after that, well, we got another place down in, in the financial district. Can you go look at that one? And they started to get a lot more projects and stack them up. Now they're doing double what they were before because their close rate doubled and their lead flow doubled. So, when you catch them down here, ordinarily, according to Aberdeen, that's a 16% close rate. So how do we catch them when they're here? That's the challenge, okay? And so that's where you want to build that coordinated marketing and prospecting strategy so that you're filling your pipeline with people who are in that bucket, okay? And when you do that, according to Forrester, that's a 74% close rate. So the first piece is the marketing plan. And, when I talk about marketing plan, I'm not talking about, marketing tactics. I'm talking about what's your strategy? Who are you going after and why? And what is it that they want right now? And what's going to get their attention? Because that's part of the problem with the pandemic is really getting somebody's attention, getting that phone call in the first place. And then when you do that, how does your message differentiate you? How do you stand out from your competitors? And when is it that they're going to be thinking about making a change or looking into whatever it is that you provide for them? Okay, and then what's your action plan to produce those leads? And how has that changed with the pandemic? Okay, because I find that a lot of times with manufacturers, have been in the market for so long that they've acquired a lot of different types of customers in a lot of different markets. The other thing that I see quite often is that they've been in a market so long because they have such a special niche that they've penetrated that market to, 70-80%. And now how do they branch off into something else? But I think ordinarily it's like we've got, we're in a lot of different places. So if you, if you have limited resources, where are you going to spend your time really to get the biggest bang for your buck, okay, and time? And so what I want to do is give you some, actually, I should have taken the business to consumer right out because I don't think anybody here is business to consumer. But if you focus on the left-hand side of this, what I'd like you to do is just think about what is one market that you see opportunity in and want to focus on. And when you pick that market, how can you segment that so that you really have a fine-tuned definition of who it is you're going after, okay? So I just closed a new client that makes a water jet machine, water jet manufacturer. And they never really thought about this in a very specific way. And so, when I was with him last week, he had picked certain markets. But when we looked at, okay, how many of them are there in the United States? Because he is the U.S. Office for this company. There's just too much, too many. So how do we segment that? Well, segment that. We can segment that by end-use application. Okay, yes, metal fabrication. Yes, we want to go after that, right? But not every metal fabricator is the same in terms of what the opportunity is, how they would use your equipment, who would need it now. And so it could be an industry vertical, but it also could be further on the end use application. It could be how they buy. It could be where they're located geographically. That's the other thing, So, he has 4 dealers. Where are they located? And what also, where are the targets located geographically? Okay. I had a client that was, they make devices, vessels that hold, very caustic materials. Their market is semiconductor fabrication. Okay. And they've got good penetration here in the Northeast. That's where he's located, right? Where's his growth potential? California. Okay. So does it make sense to hire a rep in Charlotte, North Carolina, or in San Francisco, right? And so where they're located geographically, what they make, their products or services, the size of the business. So these are ways to segment your group. So take maybe a minute or two and write down one market, but use some of this criteria to make it as specific as possible. So I'll give you a minute or two to do that. Okay. So let's see. Peter, are you there? Peter, can you unmute yourself?
Yep, can you hear me?
What'd you write down, Peter? Yeah. you mind if I?
So for me, it's landscape architects.
Okay, great. Now, Lance, so you probably then would further segment that geographically, would you not?
Correct, we do it like,
Yeah, and you could very easily produce a list of how many are there, right? And so if you pick a geographic radius around your office and you figure, oh, there's 10,000 of them, maybe you want to further segment that somehow by size,
for
right?
sure, 10,000.
Yeah, yeah, and great, that's perfect. Awesome. Okay, how about let's see, let's pick some. How about Daniel? Is Daniel there? Yeah. Dan, what'd you put down?
Hi, everybody. I'm kind of in the business to business category. And the primary focus for us from common buying factors is cost, quality, and schedule. We make military hardware, and we're in kind of a niche market. It's tough to break into other areas, and provide a lot of parts for submarines, U.S. Navy submarines. So there's only a few makers of that, two actually, from a new construction standpoint. So that's kind of what I had jotted down.
Yeah, there's not a lot of people making subs, that's for sure.
No.
And the only thing you can do is keep track of who those subcontractors are, right? Who are the
Right.
players, and how's that shifting, right from, starting from the government down to the individual, major defense contractors, and who are they dealing with, and just keeping a pulse on that.
Yeah, we've had
Go ahead.
no, we've had quite a few issues, concerns the prior year. A lot of the work from home models that the government contract agencies have developed. It's just it's very hard to track people down. They're not communicating with each other within their own organization. So we end up trying to do that for them because they're not showing up at the office anymore. It's been really challenging.
Well, that's good that you're doing that, because that gives you intel.
Yeah,
It gives you intel that your competitors may not have.
when they pick up the phone, yes.
Well, yeah, but
Well, we
they
try.
want intel too, okay?
Yeah,
Yeah, and they want intel too. And so, it's not like, hey, what can you do for me? It's like, hey, you know what, I'm finding this. I want to know what you think. So unless there's other commercial opportunities for you, let's see, who else? Let's pick one more. Anybody want to volunteer or get some feedback on what they put down?
Sure, Ken.
I'll volunteer.
Go
Okay,
ahead.
go ahead.
Me?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go,
Okay.
Gary.
Yeah, we at Bovee Printing and Fabrication print what they call functional printing that goes onto various parts. Could be nameplates, it could be membrane switches, it could be UL tags, it could be anything of that sort. And what you've identified here is ideal client profile and business to business really matches up very closely with what we developed now quite a few years ago. We call it best fit profiling. And we actually created a scoring system based upon our intelligence about a customer and how well they fit these various categories that we do business in. And we use that to score the companies in terms of which we would target primarily for our marketing and prospecting efforts. That's worked very well, actually, because we have a sort of sweet spot. But what we found under COVID is that there's been some subtle changes and some not quite so subtle changes, I think as Dan was commenting about, to how we had to weight that. So that, for example, we used to weight very, very highly those within a geographic dimension of 100 miles from our office in Bow. We now find that that has not near the importance it used to. We're making contacts, and one of our customers we just brought on was in California, for God's sakes, because we happened to do something that really met a niche need that they had. So it goes back to what you were saying earlier about the finding being to convey a solution to a problem that they have when they have it. But again, what we found, and this is, you can maybe reflect on this, Ken, is that people typically scratch when they have an itch, but that itch changes over time. And as a consequence, you don't know who's going to have the itch at the time you say, hey, you want me to scratch your back? So
Right.
we're finding that early thing in marketing to be a very tough thing to wander through, I guess.
Yeah.
I'll let you comment on that.
Yeah, that's a really good suggestion or comment, Gary. And so it's really, and I'm going to talk about that in a few different slides. But we really today, it's so important to keep a pulse on what's happening in the industry. And that's why it's sort of, I did this exercise, because because it depends on what industry it is. And then once you know what the trends are, what's happening, see there's two parts to your marketing strategy. The first is the internal analysis. That is, who is it and what do they really need? And when are they going to need it? That's the real question. I'm going to get into that in a little bit more in a minute. But the other part is externally, what's happening, okay? And, if we were having this conversation in March, it would be a lot more relevant, but it's still relevant today, okay? So, these are factors that are affecting, will affect your markets. And keeping a pulse on what's happening will give you an idea of where to focus and who in your target audience may be a better prospect now, and also what is it that's going to get their attention? Okay, so technology, for example, you say printing, right, Gary? Now, has technology affected your industry at all? Right? I mean, people used to have these big presses, and that's how it got done, right? Now it's all digital.
Well, we deal with custom products only. So really, you don't print anything unless it's specified to us. And our market tends not to be the huge operator with millions of parts, but rather someone who wants a custom part that varies in parts from maybe 5,000 to 50,000. If it gets larger than that, typically they go offshore or to some of the very large printers here in the US.
But you're printing switching the labels on it, aren't you? No,
we print labels, but switches as well, nameplates. But it tends to be the small to medium sized manufacturer, not huge, say that like GE or anything like that.
Yeah, but I mean, I already described how technology's affected my industry. Huge, massive transformative change, and in printing in general, has been huge change. Okay, so technology has affected everybody's business, and a lot of them in a disruptive way. Okay, how people buy. My description of that medical device manufacturer and how they were going to market, or even in medical device, if that's a market you're in, they have these global purchasing organizations that are combining, now that, hospitals, if you're selling ultimately to a hospital, a medical device or a pharmaceutical product or whatever it is, your customer, maybe not you, but your customers are, they have these global purchasing groups, that you have to go through. Public perception, right? Some of you are in aviation, markets. Do you think Boeing had a public perception problem over the last couple of years? How's that affected the market, right? Target customer groups. Okay, then, and so what you find, Gary, is that once you're out there talking to people, and so, what you want to do, and it takes time, but if you take your sales hat off and put your marketing hat on, your market research hat on, okay, and you start talking to people, you find that there's things going on. So I have a client that is a baking organization, and they hired me because they wanted to sell more of their branded products into the marketplace. Okay, and then COVID hit, and they found that there were a lot of other manufacturers, and some of them they already did business with, right? So they're already talking to these people, but then all of a sudden they came out of the woodwork because why? Because their competitors were falling down. The competitors were falling down, and they needed they had other capabilities too that some of their competitors didn't have, and they were able to fill that need quickly and keep it. And so now they're like, and it was more profitable business for them. So they're like going like gangbusters. And so
Okay.
you
don't
Yeah.
mention here, supply chain. That's right now is
Yeah.
probably the single largest concern that most of our customers have is supply chain disruptions.
Yeah. So that's a different webinar, and then I'm not the person to talk about it. But I do understand that there's a lot going on there. And you know what? To me, when there's something like that happening, I'm a salesperson, okay? I'm looking for the opportunity. If there's a supply chain problem somewhere, then that's an opportunity for somebody to step in and fill it. Okay?
That's
And-
exactly what you do.
Yeah. And there are people, if who was it that we were talking to? I can't remember. Somebody that we were talking to was actually getting, it was a printer. That they're printing stuff like wallpaper and fulfillment, and these fulfillment companies that are catching lots of customers on the web, right? And they're sourcing it out in whoever, Philippines or China or whatever, and they're finding that that's a problem, or they can do it now much more economically and get it to their customers much faster. That's the other thing that's happened. Amazon changed our whole perception of how quickly we get stuff, right? And we expect it from everybody. And so, these people are able to take advantage of that. They go, well, why are you dealing with that problem of delay and cost? We can help you with both of those, right? And so, anyway, the basic customer desires, like, again, those are good examples. Basic customers, short, we want quick, we want, what do people really want? Speed and responsiveness and expertise. And, but, when you talk, what else is there? What are their short range and long range plans for them? And where is that opportunity? Is that a trend, or is that an opportunity for you? The economy obviously affects everybody's business. I have a client that's very niched into automotive and aviation, and it's like you just gotta wait to come back. And now they're almost going into a third shift now. Finally, it's come back, but they couldn't really shift into medical because of what they make. They needed other equipment to do that. Customer base. How many customers do you have? How many prospects are there within your geographic reach? how competitive is it? And then political climate. Okay, so, for you, Dan, is there a, there's a new, there's a new political, political organization. How's that going to affect the defense contracting industry? And, or, regulatory things. I had a client that did solar installations, and their business was affected by when is the government going to change the requisitions that you get for doing solar installations. And every time there was a change pending, their business would boom because everybody would want to get in before that happened. And then after it changed, that's how I got these guys, because the sales manager I knew before called me up because the recs had changed, and then their phone stopped ringing. So he needs your help. So how, what are some of those things? And so I think, you want to really be, as much as possible, paying attention to what's happening out there. Okay. Your customers have should be doing this as well. Customers are probably your number one source for information. What are they seeing happening out there? What are the trends that are happening for them? How are they shifting? Okay. But there's a lot of free information that comes out of the government. So I do business with banks. So I get, emails from the FDIC. I don't read it all the time, but you know what? Something might catch my eye that just gives me some intel, right? Industry reports. So I get, emails from some of the, the management bigger management consulting firms. Who knows? I mean, there might be something in there that gives me some I read the Boston Business Journal. That's the only publication I read. I read that. I get good information about what's happening in the marketplace. And, go to their websites. One of my markets is software companies, right? Every time that, and if you're in medical device, bioscience, whenever, there's a lot of money being thrown around in bioscience. Unbelievable. It's like tech was in 2001. They're just throwing money at stuff that has no market cap at all. And but every time that happens, they have to file a Form D. So you can find out, who got the money. And, if a software company has been funded, I know either they're going to go hire coders and architects, or they're going to build out a marketing and sales team, right? And so those are people I'm going after. Yeah, trade shows. Andrew says trade shows are a good opportunity to get information, but the problem is no one's having them anymore, right? Conferences, the conferences are still happening, but it's all gone virtual. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute when we get into the prospecting strategies. But thanks, that's good insight, Andrew. Other salespeople, I find that sometimes the salespeople are the eyes and ears of the business, of the marketplace. They're the ones out there talking to people. They know what's going on. Business directories, you can go and look at, what are people saying? Maybe a CEO from a company you're going after, was a speaker. What is it that they were talking about? What's on their website is new news. And then there's the paid resources like the Cap IQ or Thomson Reuters or other Gartner or Aberdeen or resources. So keep a pulse on what's happening. And then the other thing is, how do we catch them when they're here? When they're just starting to figure out, okay, do we want to deal with something, right? and what would cause them to make a change. Now, people will change because they're having a bad experience. Maybe they don't like the person that's helping them. The product doesn't meet their needs anymore, or they don't like the current provider. But the problem with change is bad experience is that you don't know about it until you talk to them. Changes are things that you can see. Changes are things that your prospects publicize. Okay, if there's a new vice president of sales at company A, and that's not the case at company B, and they're both in my target audience, guess who I'm calling first, right? If you call on, the head of research and development, and there's a new person there, there's a reason why there's a new person there, okay? They want to make some changes. And so if there's a new location, if there's a new product coming out, if they're merged with another company, if they divested something. So these changes are things that you will see. That they're the first thing that companies publicize. And then, of course, if there's any legal or regulatory thing, that these are things that will get people on the phone, and they'll want to talk to you. So that, when you think about all of these things in a proactive way and really brainstorm it and dig into it. And, it sounds like, Gary, you did some of that, which is good. And you're still trying to, shift it based on what you're learning. That's what you need to do. And then you can focus, aim, and adjust. And when you're doing that, then you have specific markets you're spending your time on, and you know where to go to find them. Because, if you want, a defense contractor, or you want a food manufacturer, you're not going to go the same places. You're not going to have the same message. But when you do focus, then you know where to go, and you can perfect that message that is relevant to them. And then when you do that, and you start doing that when a combination of marketing, social media, and just talking to people, then the people who notice that are other people who know these targets, and you can collaborate with them. Or maybe they're a good, independent agent for you, or distributor. And that, as a minimum, are the people that can introduce you to dozens of these people. Okay. So then you build your target list. Okay. And there's a lot of resources that different price points. So the lowest price point, resources are, these Info USA, Reference USA, where you're typically subscribing for less than $1,000, and you can go in and build a list whenever you want, or you just buy a static list. If you just want to buy a static list of point in time, you can, for a couple $100, buy a list. But the quality isn't as good. Dun & Bradstreet and Hoover's merged years ago, and then they went out and bought a lot of these AI companies that are scraping the web for information. So they tend to be the same thing with Zoom Info, a lot more better quality, but it's more expensive. It's more like $4,000 for a subscription, and then each additional one is less. LinkedIn is useful in just finding, you can create a high quality list of very interesting people in a short period of time using their search algorithms. However, you can't really search so well for companies and, you're not going to get company size or revenue, or you won't get any of that information. It's really just looking for interesting people, but very, very useful tool, okay, for that. Okay, and then the next thing is what's going to get their attention, right? What is it? How do you perfect that dialogue to get people on the phone, right? How do you get them on the phone, like Dan was suggesting? And you really need to think about what is it that they're thinking? What's going on with them? What are the problems that they're having? Again, your customers are your best resource for that. But, and it's really in how do you help them in the first place? So again, we're on the left-hand side of this, the B2B. Either you're helping them be more efficient, you're helping them with their operations, or you're helping them to reduce costs, or you're helping them to make a better product, or you're helping them get customers like me, okay? Where do you help them? And again, unless there's a problem they're having in that area, then really it's not compelling. So what are the problems they may be having in the area where you help them? And that's the message. So, salespeople often they miss that. They miss that change, that dynamic that, no, you don't want to talk about what you're doing to help them. You want to talk about the problem in the first place. That will get their attention because that's what they're thinking about. And then when you talk about that in a unique way, and look for how they're not being served to solve it, or you become a resource because of your expertise, then that's what people say, hey, you really need to talk to Comtus because what? And that you have some branding that follows with it because you're an expert in that area. And so you'll know that, I mentioned that, I'm currently doing business with community banks because there's a lot of reasons, right? But when I get on the phone with a bank president, I say, look, I know you guys are really preoccupied with the PPP, and with interest rates so low, your profits being affected. And, on the retail side and the business bankers, they're used to going out to chamber meetings and community events. None of that's happening. So that, they're really, looking for some help there. That's why I thought we should talk. They get it and they agree, right? Because I know what's going on with them. Okay. All right. And so once you've done this analysis, then you can figure out now, because you've got a razor focused approach of who you're going after, what's going to get their attention, you can now pick the tactics that will get to them and get a response. And in B2B, I think there could be trade media. So Andrew said something about trade shows. I mean, I'm not even sure trade shows are even happening, to be honest with you. But if they are, they're virtual. And but conferences are different. So maybe there's a conference that's happening, and maybe there's some advertising opportunities there or maybe it's the publication, that the trade journal where you can get some exposure. But direct response really is, using a targeted list, offering them something, being creative on your response device, but mostly turn that into like a contact marketing program where, in a direct response strategy, you or your sales reps are the response mechanism. So in other words, don't send 1,000 letters. Send 25 and call each one and be creative with it. Okay. And you'll have much better success that way. And use social media now. LinkedIn would be in a B2B environment really the most effective. And, it's the biggest professional network in the world, 760 million people. Every Fortune 500 company is there. And so depending on the industry you're in, that is a very proving to be very effective tool to use. And then just traditional lead generation, email, website optimization, digital strategies, and speaking and trade shows, and associations. Okay. All right. So we're going to pivot now into prospecting strategies. Any questions about the marketing strategy? Okay, so I put together a list of pretty much everything you could probably be doing. And what I wanted, things have been affected by the pandemic. So trade shows we already talked about, right? I don't know, Andrew, are trade shows even happening now? Because you mentioned trade shows.
We do a lot of, they're more boutique. So they sort of blend a conference. And the nice thing is you get to, we do a lot of international events. And so you're participating in a lot of panels, dialogue, and you're actually sitting at the panels with competitors, with folks with complementary industry experience. And so, but the other sort of the hidden part of it is the accessibility. So a lot of the events we do will be pan trade zone, literally global. So you'll have people on for 24 hours a day. And you also have, so the reach, because a lot of clients can attend because they don't have to travel and hotel and meals and all of that. And also a lot of these are recorded. So they stay up. So, you stay live and visible for upwards of a year when people go back to that trade show. So it's different. It's a very different climate. But what I'm finding is they're scrapping for content experts, people to make a presentation, participate in panels. So the dynamic has shifted a bit. And then we're also queued up for more live starting in Q3.
Yeah. So it sounds like they're actually it's well thought out. So they're actually putting people together in forums that enable you to have some recourse, and that's much better. And I think the technology's gotten way better. I went to 3 events last year. They're more conferences, but it went from painful to, oh, this is kind of cool.
And you do get a chance to actually really sit down and dialogue with competitors.
Yeah.
And you realize that you're all in this together. And there's a lot more sharing of information than I've seen in live shows, to be honest.
Yeah.
With you.
Okay, that's good. And and then you also mentioned something that Gary brought up was that now, it's gone more global. I mean, the Waterjet guy he lives in Arizona, and the company's based in North Carolina.
Yeah.
And 2 years ago, would that have been a target for me? No. I mean, there's plenty of business for me in New England.
Right.
And so that's been a shift. And so what I'd like you to do is take a look at this list and just carve up where are your leads coming from now. Okay. So if you get like 50% of your leads from existing client referrals, put a 50 there. If you get 20% from cold calls, put a 20 there until you've got 100. Where are your leads coming from now? Just take some time and carve that up. Gary asked if we could get the slideshow. So yeah, I'm happy to send the deck out, and also we got this recorded, so we can make the recording available for you. All right, and so now I want you to think about, where's your time going? So the time that you spend prospecting, what are you doing with that time? You know, and think about that. And then how has this shifted? So, you know, I think that, you know, when Andrew was talking about trade shows, for example, that the presentation and the formats changed to make it still effective, but it's not the same thing as being there physically and being able to walk around and talk to people and, you know, have lunch and dinner with them. But you know, and I'm finding as a result of that, whenever I attend an event like that, or even a speaking engagement, a webinar, it's all about how do you follow up? You know, and a networking thing, you've got to follow up and be a lot more proactive. Or the, you know, the opportunity doesn't materialize, and then maybe it ends up being cold outreach to because somebody said something, and or use social media to warm it up. So I think a lot of the ways that you execute in some of these channels has shifted because of the pandemic. But I, you know, hopefully you've learned something from just thinking this through, this exercise. I'm going to move on just to keep on the schedule. But the other thing is, what's the formula? So, you know, the first part of your prospecting plan is what channels will you execute in? The second part is the formula. How much activity do you need to do in order to achieve your goals? Okay. And, you know, there's different efficiencies depending on which channel you're working. Return on invested time is ROIT. So, you know, ordinarily it used to be that cold calling was like 2% return on invested time, meaning that you got to talk to like 100 people to close 2 deals. You know, I've found, and, you know, vicariously through my clients, that with the pandemic, that's changed. That changed because for a while, and part of it was because people were more available than ever before. And you're saying, well, why is that? Because they weren't in their office. Precisely because they weren't in their office. You know, you call some people, you call their office, and they had their phone systems changed, so it went to their cell phone. And people are sitting at home going from Zoom meeting to Zoom meeting, meaning they weren't driving around, they weren't having as many meetings. And so if you happen to catch them in between the Zoom meeting, you know, it was more possible. Now I think that's changed a little bit, but I found for a while, it was easy to get people on the phone. But I think that because of the things that we've been talking about this morning, people are looking for information about what's happening and how things are you know, what's happening in the marketplace. And so I think that if we're you know, sharing that information and looking for doing it in a way that we're you know, providing some insights, then people are going to get on the phone with us. Okay. All right. And then as you move up, you know, if you do some direct marketing, like I said, if you just send out 1,000 mailings and don't follow up with anybody, the best you can expect is to go from 2% to 3%. But if you send a well-targeted, well-timed message to somebody, you know, you can significantly improve that. I have a client that does website design work, okay? And she can easily see if somebody needs help with their website. And so she can send them a very specific message And then she follows up with everyone, and it's very effective. Okay. Or speaking, I think that's been, if you have any way to educate your target audience or people who are immersed in that target market, then that is a really good strategy. Networking now, again, it's gone to conferences or associations, so it's much, much less effective, meaning that you've got to combine that with just cold outreach. I'm involved with a bank now because, the local chamber had the new CEO speaking, and, as soon as that was over, I picked up the phone and I called him. Right? Or you're at an event and somebody's talking about something related to what you do. You can either say, well, that was interesting, or you can pick up the phone and call them. Or you can use social media to reach out. Okay, so we find we're doing a lot more of that now with social media, and it works. And referrals, I find that a lot of my clients, when I first start working with them, are not proactive with their referral strategy, and they're missing big opportunities there with customer referrals. Everybody has appreciated the benefit of a good referral, and the quality of that. But why are we not more proactive with that? And then having alliance strategic partners. I mean, distributors and independent agents fall into this category, but I find far too often, we are not really doing that in a strategic way. And what are the mutual expectations? What is it that you understand about the market in the territory that you've assigned to them, or do they have one in the first place? And how are they addressing that market? How would you address it if it were you? And so would you expect, or what are they expecting to do? And having some mutual expectations, and then how's that getting tracked to quality introductions, so that when you're out there meeting a customer or doing it virtually with them, so they're personally introducing you. They're there when you meet them because they know these people. They're handing you relationship. And when you're operating up there, that's a 95% return on invested time. Okay. But common prospecting mistakes are really just relying on passive. I know, a lot of my manufacturing clients have people find them. People find them all the time on the web, right? But that's passive. And if that stops, then, it's not proactive. And passive strategies work. Don't get me wrong, advertising, whatever it is, but you don't want to rely only on passive. Okay, you want to have some proactive. You don't want to be dependent on a single channel because it'll dry up. You don't want to, you want to make sure that you have time that you spend on prospecting on a continuous basis. So that's why it's important to really pick what channels you're working, and then what activities do you need, chunk it down. What are the activities that you or your sales people should be doing, and how often, in order to get the number of meetings that you need, and to get the number of proposals out that you need to, and to close the number of the amount of business that you need to, okay? And or having a definite plan, or tracking and adjusting the effectiveness of your sources. We were talking the other week with a company, and their business was off 40%. And I was talking to them, and we figured out, okay, tell me about your types of clients. And there were different categories and different sizes. And we ended up seeing, for you to get not back to where you were, but to where you should be. you only need to bring in 41 clients a year. And you know, he had 2 salespeople and and himself he was actively prospecting. So 3 people, that's 2 per person. Okay. Now it's not easy, but it's doable, right? And then I said, how many deals do you do in a year? He said 1,600. I'm like, you're doing 1,600 deals, yet you're not doing the 41 that you really should be doing, right? That's what happens when you're not proactive. Yeah, you're getting deals, but you get low value deals, or you know, maybe not the kind that you really need. And so, you know, you want to make sure that you're combining the other things that are working for you with these proactive strategies. And then the question is, who's going to do it? Who's gonna do it? And who do you really need? So if you determine, all right, well, you know, we need to bring in some more people, or we need to plug somebody that we already have into a different role, assuming that they're the right person and that they're willing to do it and they have time to do it, then you know, do you need an account executive? Because the kind of things we're talking about here is what an account executive would do: get meetings with decision makers, run them through a sales process and close deals. Okay. Or is your biggest opportunity with existing customers that you're not getting you know, as much business as you can? There's more business we have. Maybe what you need is account managers. Or is it that, you know, we really need more leads? That's what we need. We just need somebody who is doing outbound and bringing in opportunities and getting us phone conversations. I mean, I've outsourced that this month. I hired a guy doing some emails, direct targeted emailing for me. And actually, that's how I got the water jet guy. And you know, it's starting to bear fruit now in a month. You know, so I outsourced it. Or are you, you know, do you have a marketing program that's actually working, and you have a lot of inbound, and you just need, you know, some people to be proactively following up on that, engaging with these people and closing those deals? Okay. Or is it independent reps, distributors, or sales agents, and then, you know, doing some of the things I mentioned just previously? Okay. And so if you to really look at what do you really need, you know, take a look at how the people that are doing the sales, where are they spending their time? Because if you have an account executive who's spending more than 20% of their time prospecting and trying to turn over leads, maybe what you need is an outbound, and someone doing outbound. So, you know, that you can free up your account executive's expensive time to be sitting down with prospects closing deals. Okay. Or maybe you want these inbound reps qualifying leads that you have, because a lot of them are just going to be tire kickers, and qualifying those leads for the account executives or the outbound sales development reps to close the deal. Right. Or maybe you do really need people to qualify and get meetings and close deals, and that's the account executive. Or maybe it's an account manager. Okay. So just take a look at how they're spending their time, and to get a better idea about determining that. Okay. And then what are you tracking, and how do you track it? Okay. I find far too often that my clients are not tracking everything they should be in order to determine what's the best way for me to help them. And everybody knows that they're making sales, right? Because you got to invoice them. But you know, are they tracking? All right, how many deals did you close? Of course, you know that, right? But are you really looking at that ratio? What's the average customer value? And is it tracking, because if you're not meeting your revenue goal, but you are closing deals, maybe that's the problem. They're too small. Maybe you need to change your target market strategy, or maybe you need to increase your projection of how many you need. Okay. And then how many proposals are going out there? I mean, I find sometimes people can't tell me what's your proposal close rate. Well, again, it's a simple ratio. Because if you're putting out a lot of proposals, but you're not closing deals, then you know where you need help. Maybe it's who you're proposing to, or how that's happening in your sales process. Okay. And how many first appointments are you having with new opportunities? First appointments, how many first opportunities do you need to close a deal? So you know how many meetings do you need to have? Because if you're having a lot of first appointments and you're not putting out the right amount of proposals, or you're not closing the right amount of deals, then that's the problem, right? That what's happening in those meetings, how are you conducting those meetings, or how many contacts are they making, or how many leads are you getting? Because if you're not getting first appointments, then it's in one of those two areas. What are they doing to produce leads, and then how are they reaching out to them? How are they turning those leads into contacts? Okay, and so this is from the top down, how you evaluate where your salespeople are getting stuck, or how efficient are they, and where can they improve their efficiencies. Okay, and then the last piece is the sales process. All right, so you have to have a client, a potential client, or selling doesn't start. Okay, they are sitting there with you in a virtual meeting, or someday face to face, and they're there for the purpose to see if they want to be a customer. And so you talk to them, you qualify them, you find out what do they need, how do they need it, why do they need it, and then determine that, okay, this is a fit. They do have a problem, and you can fix it. So you tell them what you can do and how much it will cost, right? And then it's a trial close. It's like, what do you think? Will this work for you? What reservations do you have? Okay. If they don't buy, this is where you get the first objection. Well, I need to go talk to my CFO. We need to check our budget. We're wanting to talk to at least one more person, whatever that is. And you handle the objections, and maybe you close the deal, or you don't, you get objection number 2. Geez, I just had a big project got dumped on me. Haven't had a chance to think about it. Can you call me in a month? Right? And then you call them in a month, and maybe they're still engaged, maybe not. That's where they disappear, right? And so the problem here is when you reach out to them, you need to find out, what is it that's going on their agenda. And I don't mean, do they need what you have and why? I mean, what are they going to do with that information? Okay, because there's 3 possible things. One is to go and buy from you. The second is to do nothing. People just want that information to do nothing. Stay with the incumbent, not change, not buy what you have. And the third is to go buy from somebody else. Okay, and you really need to figure out, we've spent this whole segment really talking about marketing and prospecting, but do they trust your solution in the first place? Okay, and how will they make that decision? What is their compelling reason to change? And is it compelling enough for them to take a risk and buy from somebody else? And why? And are they committed to making that change? This is where you weed out the do nothings. And then how will they make that decision? Who's involved in that decision? And And how will that decision be made? And when will that decision be made? This is the problem my pump distributor was having. They weren't talking to the person making the decision. So the person that, they were talking to, yeah, they wanted that pump fixed because they didn't want to have the tenant screaming at them because they couldn't take a shower or they couldn't wash their hands in the bathroom on the 34th floor, right? Of course they wanted that pump fixed. But how compelling was that to the person who actually could say yes? And that's that's the change we made with the medical device manufacturer. It was like, one of these pharmaceutical companies sent them a request for 100 parts. Each one had to be figured out individually. I said, good, call them up and find out. Okay, which one should we go after and why? And the purchasing person didn't even want to talk to them about that. So the VP went and said, look, this is a lot of work. I mean, why should we do this? Right? And there's like, yeah, you're right. Let's have a meeting. And right. And then the last piece is, what are they willing to invest? What is the budget? What are they thinking they want to pay for? Okay. So when you do a presentation, there's a compelling reason them for change what they're doing. They're committed to doing that. You know how they're going to decide, when they're going to make that decision and how much they want to pay for it. So that, and that's the other thing. When you're dealing with an existing customer that's just going repurchase for something that they've been buying all along, that's a different situation. That's a transactional sale, okay? But when you're selling to a new customer and they're buying from somebody else, and if they don't have a reason to switch, well, it's up to you. But if you're going to give them a proposal, do it in person. Don't send it to them, because once they have your information, they don't need you anymore. So you should present proposals in that case. And that way you put yourself in a position to get feedback and close the deal or get a no, or and then head off buyer's remorse, and then set up an implementation plan so they're happy they made that purchase, and they want to tell everybody else how great you are and continue to be a loyal customer. Okay. Any questions? All makes sense, right? Okay. I think Eric mentioned that Eric, do you want to talk about the CARES Act money?
Yeah, sure. So you're pretty much done, Ken, with the presentation?
Yeah, I mean, I can
Okay.
talk about this program, what it is. I'm done with the formal part of the presentation, but we've taken some CARES Act money and we put it into a collaborative program
Right.
that is completely covered by this CARES Act money. And we have enough for 5 companies to participate in it. And we have 2 already signed up. So,
Yeah, let me, go ahead, Ken, I'm sorry.
I could talk about what we'll do during that time. And I just thought, you might be able to inform.
Yeah,
me
yeah.
more of that.
Yeah, no, let me tell, yeah, everybody, hi. So it's called our Sales Training Collaborative Program. It would be with Ken. And I'll talk about the program itself, and then I'll talk about the CARES Act funding. So the training sessions with all participating companies, we call it a collaborative because the companies, now granted, this was done live at one time in a conference room at a hotel, but now we have to do it virtually. But still, the companies all get together. Ken does the training, but they're able to share ideas back and forth, talk about their company's challenges and how to overcome them and get suggestions from the other companies. And of course, with Ken's coaching. So again, it's called the Sales Training Collaborative Program. The training sessions with all the participating companies will be done virtually. The first session over 2 half days. And Ken will work with you on your sales strategy, how to make changes that will produce better results, and then discussions with the group of companies in the collaborative. Then there's the individual company sessions. So Ken will work directly with each company individually, separately, and that can be done if Ken's still willing to do it at your office, or we can do it virtually.
Yep.
And that'll run pretty much like a 9 to 4. So you can count a full day on that. And then the last session's a half day debrief, with a round table of the companies and sharing ideas, what they've learned and anything else. Now, as far as the grant goes, yes, we do have grant money that can fully fund your participation in the collaborative. The only thing is, though, you have to be significantly impacted by COVID. This is a CARES Act grant through the federal government, and basically, if you are eligible, you're fully funded. It's not money you actually receive. It's basically you're not charged for participating. So what I would have to do is, you let me know, or we'll follow up with you after the webinar to talk to you about if you're interested in the program. And if you are, and you want to try to receive the funding or, to cover the cost 100%, I would get you an application to fill out, short application. Basically, it's justifying how you've been impacted by COVID. And when they say that, we're talking about loss of business, loss of revenue, customer orders are way down or have stopped, you've laid off employees, possibly other hardships to your business. And like I said, it's in that application. It's pretty straightforward. It's not very long. And then I give that to our president, Zanag Ibrahim. And if you make a good case for yourself, he'll approve it. I can tell you this, he's approved every one of them that I've sent him for this program and other programs that we run where there's CARES Act funding available. So anyway, so that's pretty much it about the funding, about the program. Let me know if you're interested. Like Ken said, there's 3 slots left open. We're trying to run 5 in the collaborative, 5 companies. We're looking at probably starting this at the end of March, so it's pretty quick. They are first come, first serve, so you can't wait around forever. And so if it is something you're interested in, give me a call. We'll follow up with you, but the sooner that, if you are really very interested, the sooner you talk to me, the better. 603-724-0802. That's 603-724-0802. Email is ericb, ERICB @nhmep.org. And that's really about it, unless you want to add anything else, Ken, or?
No, I want to introduce Christine actually too. Christine McIntyre works for me, and she's been here. And so just in case, she may follow up with you just to see if you're interested in the collaborative or not.
Right.
And or Eric or potentially myself. The other thing is we also have custom programs, with MEP too. So if this thing doesn't fit you, we can talk about that as well. Okay. And other than that, it's really the one thing that we do more often than anything else is to continue what we're already doing. So the real question is, what are you going to do differently, right? And so feel free to reach out to us, or we'll call you to see if you're interested. And thanks for participating. Really appreciate it.
One last thing I just want to bring up, and thank you, Ken, is I sent everybody a link to an evaluation. We really need you to fill that evaluation out. It's very important to us. It helps us improve our webinars. It's a pretty short evaluation.